Hi everyone. Today we're going to be going over an introduction to conditionals, which is essentially a way of making decisions based on different values in our code and doing different actions depending on the value. So for example, if a user is logged in, we may want to show one page, whereas if a user is not logged in or not verified, we'd want to show another page. There's a lot of different ways or reasons why we would want to branch our logic. And the most simple way is with an if statement. So let's go ahead and jump in and start talking about this. Now, here we have a very simple program that basically prints out, welcome to numbers and figures. You are currently logged in, and what would you like to do today? This is a pretty simple greeting, but this only works if we know that the user is in fact logged in. In the case that they're not logged in, we may not want to show this. We could, however, show, welcome to numbers and figures, what would you like to do today? And only show this message if they are logged in. In order to do this, we would first need to have a variable that would store whether they are logged in or not. And JavaScript and most other programming languages have the ability to store the values of truth or false. This is called a Boolean value. A Boolean value is literally just the value true or false. It cannot be anything else. And so in order to use a Boolean, we need to create a variable. So let's do const is logged in, and we can either assign it to true or false. Notice we're not using quotes. We're not making it into a string. We're literally saying this is true or this is false. So in this case, we want our value to be true and say our user is currently logged in. Now, in order to test whether a value is true or not and to do something based on that, we use what's called an if statement. And so down here, what we will do is we will write if, and then open and close parentheses, and then open and close braces. And this is the standard structure for an if statement. So we'll say if, and then we'll put whatever tests we want to do inside these parentheses, and then whatever code we want to run if it is true in these braces. So we know that this message is what we're going to want to show when we are logged in, so we'll put those within the braces. But here, we want to do some sort of test to say, if something, then do this. And here, we will say, if is logged in, and so we're going to say if the value of this variable is equal to true, then we are going to log this. And then, so we'll now see console.log, welcome to numbers and figures. If our user is logged in, if is logged in equals true, this will print, and then this line down here will print. So let's try running this and see what happens. If we run it, we'll see welcome to numbers and figures again. You are currently logged in. Again, what would you like to do today? Now we can come back up here and switch this to false. If we run it again, what do you think will happen? Well, let's try it. Here we see, welcome to numbers and figures. What would you like to do today? You'll see that this line did not run. And in fact, anything that we put in here, console.log, another short message. If we run this, it also will not be shown. So it'll say if, and in these parentheses, whatever this is, if it's true, then we do it. If it's false, we don't do it. So because is logged in equals false, nothing in these braces are going to get run. Everything after the braces will get run like normal. Everything before will get run like normal. But anything within these braces will be done or not done depending on the value of is logged in. Now, we also have the ability to do something if the opposite of this test is true. So we can say is logged in equals true. And so if we're logged in, we're going to show this. But what if we want to show something down here for not logged in? So let me pull this over. So let's say, for example, if we're not logged in, we want to say, you're not currently logged in. Please log in to access this page. And we'll get rid of this and say, so we can only do something if we're logged in. And if we're not logged in, we want to show you're not currently logged in. Please log in to access this page. Well, we have this if statement here that says if is logged in equals true. Then we run this. And then what we can do is come down here and say else and open and close braces. And if we put this code in here, and format everything a little bit nicely, we'll say, okay, if is logged in is equal to true, then we will run this message. Else, otherwise, if is logged in is not equal to true, if whatever is in these parentheses is not true, then we will run this else statement. So by doing this if else, we will say, if it's true, do this, otherwise do this. But one time through this code, we'll never have the if statement and the else statement run at the same time. So let's see this in action. Currently is logged in is equal to true. If we run this, we'll see, welcome to numbers and figures. You are currently logged in. What would you like to do today? If we change this to false and run it again, you'll see, welcome to numbers and figures. You are not currently logged in. Please log in to access this page. So you'll see, we'll only have one branch or the other run. We'll never have both run. Now we can do more with this if statement than just testing whether a variable is true or false. Let's go ahead and comment this out for now and work on another example. In our last video, we built a function that rolled a die and output a value. And it looked something like this. Roll die equals max number, and then when we ran this, it would roll a die between 1 and 6, based on this number here, and store it in a value called roll value, and then output this. So let's run this real quick and make sure it still works. And if we run it, we get values between 1 and 6, or mostly just 1 and 3, evidently. There we go. We got something higher than 3 finally. Let's say we wanted to branch some logic or do different things based on what the roll of the die was. If this were a game where the first person to roll a 6 would win, then we would need to do a test to see if the value is equal to 6. And so one way to do that, let's get rid of this console.log, or actually let's keep it so that we can see what our value is. And let's come down here and say if, and we're going to do some sort of test, and we're going to say if we, and our thing is if the roll equals 6, output U1. Okay, so here we want to do console.log U1, and we're going to want to do some sort of test in here to determine whether we won or not. And so in order to test the equality, or if a variable equals a value, we're going to do if roll value, that's the variable we want to test against, and we do 3 equal signs, 1, 2, 3, and then we want to say whatever value we want to test against. So if roll value triple equals 6, then we're going to output console.log U1. Any other time, it's not going to say anything. It's going to just output the roll value and end. So let's do this a couple times. We have 4, 1, 3, 3, 4, and finally, took about 20 tries, we rolled a 6. And you'll see now that we rolled a 6, we have this output as U1. Any other time, when the roll value was not equal to 6, it wouldn't output anything. Now we could again do an else and console.log you lost. And anytime it's not a 6, we would get the you lost. But what if we wanted to do different messages based on every single value of the variable? One way to do that is to use what's called an else if statement. And so what this will do is say if roll value equals 6, we'll do this. Else, if it doesn't equal 6, let's test this. And we'll say roll value equals 5. We can console.log you tied, for example. And we could do else if and keep going all the way down. And if we're going to be doing a big long chain of else if, there's actually a better way to go about this, which we'll go through in another video. But this is one way to test all possible values. So we could do roll value equals 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and have different values based on all these. Or if we only wanted to do something, if it was 6, 5, or something else, at the end of all of our tests, we could do just a catch-all else and say console.log you lost. So let's see this in action a few times. So 1, we lost. So it's going to say roll value equals 6. Not true, because it's equal to 1. So we're not going to do this. Else, so if it doesn't equal 6, let's do roll value equals 5. Well, 1 doesn't equal 5. We're going to console.log you type. We're not going to do that. Else, if it doesn't match any other test above, then we're going to console log this. So you see 1, we lost. 6, roll value was equal to 6. So we're going to say console.log you1. If we keep going through this, eventually we'll get a 5. And in that case, if we ever get it, there we go. You tied. So this is a very simple way of testing a value of a variable and performing an action based on that. Now, one last thing we can do is not just test for if a value is equal to something, but we can do something based on whether the value is greater than or equal to. And so we could say if roll value is greater than 2. So if it's a 3, well, no, let's do greater than a 3. So if roll value is greater than 3, we can console.log you were in the upper half. Else, console.log you were in the lower half. Okay, so now if we run this again, anytime we roll a 1, 2, or 3, we're going to be in the lower half. Anytime we roll a 6, 4, or 5, we're going to get this you were in the upper half. So you can do other types of tests based on whether a value is equal to or greater than. You can also do these Booleans that we did before. So there's a lot of different ways to use an if statement to branch on your code. And as we continue on, there's going to be more complex ways that we could do this. So for example, we could do a test of what happens if the roll value is greater than 3 and you're logged in, or the roll value is greater than 3 and you're not logged in. These are more complex examples that we'll get to in another video, but for now I just wanted to show some basic examples of what you can use for an if statement and how you can start branching code. Now this is a basic example of how we can start changing our flow of code based on different values. And with this, we actually have all of the core fundamentals for making most programs out there in the world. You need a way to store and retrieve values, which we do with variables. You need a way to duplicate code and run code and compartmentalize code to make it easier to run multiple times, which we have with functions. And we need a way to branch our logic and do different actions based on values of the returns of our functions or variables or any other value that we want to test on. Once we have these 3 things in place, we can do so many cool things. Now, there's a lot of more complex ways of handling all of these things and different ways to test variables with if statements. Instead of just if statements, we have different ways of testing values, and those will come. But with ifs, functions, and variables, we can do so many things. And in our next couple videos, we're going to be going over some examples and making some simple games, get some input from the user to play a game with the computer and see some of the stuff in actual action and actually try out working with all of these examples. And I'm really excited to get going with that. So in our next video, we're going to be doing a basic guess my number game. guess a number between 1 and 10, and if you guess too high, it'll tell you. If you guess too low, it'll tell you, and eventually you'll guess to the number that it gave you. And I'm really excited to start working on some actual real world examples. They're just simple games for now, but it's the building blocks and foundations that we're going to need in order to make some really cool, really complex projects in the future. So hopefully you found this helpful. If you did, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next video with a real world example in a small little game. Look forward to seeing you then. Bye.